Paul's Top 5 around the corner. Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, has been busy. Who hasn't been with the last, for a lot of things, college football, coaching, carousel. Sam, you were in College Station. We had Andrew Monaco on about Mike Elko. Just your one thought about him, and in the end, did they get the right guy?
Yeah, I think they did. Regardless of how winding the process was, I do think they ended in a really sensible, logical result with Mike Elko. The one thing that I think that has really been missing from this program the last couple of years as I dove into the end of the Jimbo Fisher era was structure and discipline. And I think that's something that Elko will bring. He's a really smart guy. He's a really no-nonsense guy. And everybody that's ever worked with him, they've described how well he builds relationships, but ultimately, he's just a damn good ball coach. And I think, that showed itself here at A&M when he was defensive coordinator, showed itself at Notre Dame, at Wake Forest, and of course the last 2 years at Duke. I mean, he took that team to back-to-back bowls. There's only one other coach in Duke history that's done that. And so I think he's got a really good grasp now that he's had a couple years to run a program of what it takes to do that. And bringing that here to a place where he's familiar, he knows the landscape, he's been here enough times, he's recruited here. I think that familiarity with the current roster, with some of these guys on this roster he recruited, and he knows and has coached, combined with the experience he got at Duke, I think is going to really deliver a lot of promise. I think the key is, can he keep the roster together? Because I think right now, A&M is at a place where they have top 5 roster talent. How much of that can he keep? If he can keep a lot of it, then I think this turnaround can happen a lot quicker. If they lose a lot of it, then it becomes a little bit more of an arduous process.
Sam, I texted you the other day because I reading the article about Jimbo that you and Max and Bruce did on The Athletic was really fantastic and so in depth. When you get into an article like that and have to go through it, what were the things that kind of surprised you the most about how that was kind of breaking down at A&M over the last couple of years?
I was just surprised how stubborn Jimbo was. And I think we all could tell, outwardly deal with him. But I didn't realize how stubborn he got internally. For instance, like the tidbits that we got about he hired Bobby Petrino mostly for Austin. Petrino was calling the plays, but it was still Jimbo's offense because Jimbo wanted that badly to prove that his team worked. And so that was interesting to hear. Obviously, he didn't really adapt very much in some areas. I think in some areas he did, but in a lot of areas he didn't. And he was the one. It was his program. They gave him the keys to it. He kind of ruled it as he saw fit. And I was really surprised at how disorganized things were. And I think you could see some hints of that in 2022 when you had all these suspensions for the freshmen and you saw them struggling on offense and Jimbo's holding a stack of papers that's sticking on a binder to try to call a play, and they're having to call a timeout to avoid a delay a game. Things like that certainly gave you a sense that maybe he's a little bit disorganized, but when you talk to people in the program, it was clear there was no real vision for the program. There was no real identity. It was all about just stacking all these players and calling the plays and then let everybody else do their job themselves. And I think that the autonomy that the other coaches had is fine. But if you've got young coaches who are in roles for the first time, they need somebody to develop them and they need somebody to help them along the way. And I just don't think there was any vision or guidance provided there at the end by Jimbo Fisher.
So, Sam, I know it doesn't matter as much now after the fact, but from your vantage point and standpoint, how real was the Stoops to A&M stuff initially?
Yeah, I think it's still hard to suss through because, you talk to people and I think you get so many different accounts of this. We just to Ross York, the AD, who made it sound like it was a fluid process and that Stoops never officially got the offer, so to speak. So I think it's semantics, right? There's always the thing where they say, an offer is never made until it's accepted and, it's not done deal until it's done deal and all that stuff. It's clear that they engaged a lot with Mark Stoops on Saturday. I think that much we know. How far they went, I think depends on who you ask. If you ask A&M, maybe they say they got to a certain point. If you ask Mark Stoops, it certainly sounded like he thought he was getting that job. But clearly, they had to run that through the board also. Ross York had to run it through, their search committee and their board of regents. And clearly everybody didn't agree on that, on Stoops being the guy. So I'm not sure quite how far they got, but it's clear that they engaged him to a large degree on Saturday. He was clearly one of their finalists. They think highly of him as a coach. But Elko was one of their finalists too, and ultimately it fell through. I think that's one thing I would love to know. I would love to know all the inner workings of how it went and what really happened there. And it may take some time to untangle that, but ultimately I do think, as messy as they may have been on Saturday night, I think they landed on the right result.
Sam, Houston is open. Willie Fritz, Jeff Traylor, lots of names will be thrown around there. Ultimately, what was the decision with Dana Holgorsen when it came down to it?
I think just the trajectory of the program, it was not good. I think it was clear when you see the on-field play, just the mood of the program. The recruiting has not been great. Right now, they have a recruiting class that's ranked 102nd in the country. It's worse than the Power 5. They only have 8 commits. That's not super encouraging at this point. You're in year 5. You're in the Big 12. You're in the city of Houston. You have a better recruiting class than that, regardless of what your strategy is. 5 years, you've only had 2 winning seasons, and ever since the 12-2 year in 2021, it's just declined. They were. I think even though they went 8-5 last year, I still thought that was a disappointing season based on what their expectations were and what the schedule was. And then this year, the Big 12 is hard, and every newcomer in the Big 12 had a difficult transition, yes. But a lot of their miscues and losses were to teams that were not legacy Big 12 teams. They lost to Cincinnati by double digits at home. They lost to UCF by double digits on the road. They fell down 28-0 to Rice in week 2. They did not score a single touchdown offensively against TCU. Those are things that I just are not acceptable, I think, anywhere. And particularly at a place like Houston that has invested a lot of money in infrastructure, a lot of money in staff salary pool, and has the fertile recruiting base that they have, the ability to attract people on the portal. It just didn't add up. And I do think in my heart of hearts, I think when Dana Holgorsen took this job, I think he had a vision for what it would be and what it would be like. And I think that build at Houston was a lot harder than he realized. And I think at the end of the day, they knew the mood was not good, the fan response and fan turnout was not good, and they had to do something to change it up.
Go ahead, Craig.
Sam, we've been talking about this, obviously, here in Waco. The retaining of Dave Aranda will move on from Jeff Grimes as offensive coordinator. We just saw Blake Shapen here in the last hour is entering the transfer portal. I don't think it was a big shock that Aranda's staying for another year, but just on your end, your thoughts on that decision and the trajectory or lack thereof right now for Baylor football.
Yeah, a lot of similar things that we just talked about with Houston in terms of mood of the fan base, trajectory of the program. It's not good. Since they went and won the Big 12 in 2021, it's been a steady decline, and it's really disappointing for a fan base and for alumni for a Baylor program that has won multiple Big 12 titles in the last decade and has played for multiple Big 12 titles as well. I am not surprised that Aranda's back, and I think a lot of it is because Mac Rose believes in Dave Aranda in a big way. And I think a lot of people there are rooting for Dave to succeed because of who he is as a person. And I understand what they're trying to do with changing the offensive coordinator and Dave calling the defense and all these, we're going to stack up the NIL and all that. I get all that. But I do have to ask the question of, if this is what it's going to take to get it to work, what are we really doing here? What does that say about who you have as the head coach? And I get it. He's a first-time head coach, and he's still learning, evolving on the job. But we're going into year 5. And I think it really puts in a situation because now you're going into year 5 that you know is make or break. So how hard is that going to make to hire a good offensive coordinator when they know it's a make or break year? And you're going to put a lot of pressure on him. And are we going to be in a situation where we're talking about a mid-season change next year because they've gotten off to a slow start? Because to me, the issues on that team go well beyond just the head coach. I think there's a talent issue there. Certainly, obviously, there was some issues on either side of the ball. I don't know if those all can be fixed in one off season, but they're making a big bet on Dave being Dave, and I guess I understand that because what attracted everybody to Dave was his mind, his defensive prowess, and what he did as a defensive coordinator. But it's a big bet to make, and it's a bold one, and I'm interested to see how it works out.
Sam, thank you. I know it's been a busy few days, and we'll slow down because of the championship game. My last question for you on Oklahoma State, Texas on Saturday. UT right now is in a steamroll type mode. They are red hot, peaking, it seems, at the right time. Mike Gundy's group, they find a way. Your thoughts about the matchup itself?
Yeah, I think I haven't seen the line. I would assume Texas is favored. It should be because of the talent level. To me, this comes down to, is Texas going to play like they did against Kansas State or Houston or a game like that, or are they going to play like they did against Alabama and Texas Tech? What Texas team is going to show up? Because if the team that shows up is the one we saw last week against Texas Tech or the one we saw against Alabama, then I think Texas wins it running away. If we see the team that played against Kansas City or against Houston that messes around and gets out to a lead and then plays with their food for 2.5 quarters, Oklahoma State will get you. And they showed that. I mean, BYU had them down pretty significantly the other night, and they chipped away. They've got a veteran quarterback with Alan Bowman. They've got a really dynamite running back in Ollie Gordon, and they've got a really veteran coaching staff. Gundy's been doing this before. He's been in this situation before. I think one thing that's underrated about this matchup is Sark has been in this spot as a coordinator. He's never been in this spot as a head coach in a conference championship game. So I'm really interested to see how his team comes out prepared for this one. But ultimately, I think Texas will end up winning this game. I think the talent differential is too much. And I do think they're going to – I think them having an effort like they did against Texas Tech, I think they've woken up a little bit. And like you said, Dave, I think they're peaking at the right time. I'm interested to see if it plays out that way on Saturday.
Sam, thank you for your time as always. Sam Comm with us, theathletic.com. He was in College Station.